So this presentation concerns investigations by Ancient Music Ireland into a family of Iron Age musical instruments from Ireland and Wales, especially for the Galway Early Music Festival. And it includes a trip to Nepal to look at similar musical instruments there. Now, before I start, I'd like to thank Máire Ní Chrónainn and all our dear friends in the Galway Early Music Festival for very kindly inviting us to make a submission to this year's online festival. We begin with the Irish Iron Age trumpets, and one particular one that also comes from Wales. Now, they're made of sheet bronze. There are actually 5 of them surviving, either complete or in parts. And they all are presented over the head of the musician vertically, which makes them very unusual. Sometimes they might be presented in an S shape, being 2 or 3 parts that are put together, or sometimes in a curved C shape. Now, we don't know much about them other than we have the complete or partly complete originals that we can reproduce, and we have 1 or 2 references in legend. This is our book, Ancient Music and Instruments of Ireland and Britain, and we have an interpretation of a legend called the Tornbo Froch. It says, also accompanying them were 7 trumpeters, dressed in costumes of many colours, with their hair in plaids that glistened and shone. Their trumpets were golden and silver and hung with pale yellow tresses. And then we have another one further on. The 7 trumpeters led a procession into the chamber, playing a special magic healing music that was so powerful that 30 of Maeve's courtiers died upon hearing it. So that's not very much to have, really. We can only glean so much from that. So just by chance, we were doing a festival in Ballina in the west of Ireland, and we were playing Iron Age trumpets, and I had one up over my head I was playing, and the owner of a Nepalese restaurant came along, and he got very excited, and he said, we have instruments just like those in Nepal. So we thought, if they have them in a living tradition in Nepal, then maybe we could go there and learn more through how they use their instruments as to how we use ours. So we decided to mount an expedition to Nepal. Now, to do that, we also decided that we would make accurate drawings and molds of one of our instruments, the trumpa créda, and bring them with us in case we could organize to use Nepalese manufacturing technology to make a new Irish trumpet. So thus armed, we set off for Nepal. We went to the town, the ancient historic town of Bhaktapur, by invitation from the University of Kathmandu, who wanted us to give a presentation. The music department of the university is based in an ancient royal palace gatehouse. On our first day at the university, we met Professor Raju, who introduced us to the class of music students. We spent a couple of hours discussing aspects of the Irish instrument collection and demonstrating playing techniques.
But inside
It takes practice. After the presentation, we showed them our drawings, and they had one of the Nepalese instruments called Narsingha in the university. So we were able to make our first direct comparison between their Narsingha and our trumpa créda, the drawings that we had of it. They were very similar in some ways. The dimensions were very similar. They were approximately the same length, and they had a very similar semicircular curve. But that's where the similarity ended. The Irish one, the trumpet, is actually a trumpet in that it's partly conical and partly cylindrical. And it has an open mouthpiece, which means you can play low notes and you can alter them and you can use circular breathing. Whereas the Nepalese Narsingha is conical along its full length, and it has a choke of about 5 or 6 inches at the mouthpiece end. So it's a horn, and it's designed to play high notes.
in Nepal, it came from Middle East back in the past.
Yeah. Okay. How far back?
Yeah, really far back.
Must be.
We are talking about 200-300 or the time of war. So it traveled back in that time.
Yeah.
And it came here and settled in Nepal. So it's originally, in ancient time, it came from the Middle East.
Middle East. Yeah.
That.
So it could have gone both ways.
Yeah.
From the Middle East.
Might be.
Ah,
but this is really a great coincidence. It's a perfect match.
We had with us a book that we had found during our research on the instruments of Nepal. It's called Auspicious Music in a Changing Society, the Damai Musicians of Nepal, and it's by Carol Tingey.
They often do side jobs, like I told you before. Like they work as tailors. Those are my people.
Tailors.
When they're not doing music. Sometimes when you have more instruments than 5, so panchai means 5. It's called no baja, 9 instruments ensemble.
9.
9. Yeah. Sometimes it often happens. You have more instruments, and even now in villages for marriages they still play this ensemble.
They still use them.
Yeah, they still use them. But in modern times, of course, it's becoming rare.
We were then honoured by the university when they gave a performance by musicians playing cymbals, drums, horns, and a type of shawm. They played a traditional tune. And it was very interesting because they told us that the young fella who was playing the shawm, he was the last player alive who knew the traditional tunes for the instrument, and they were saving them. So that was a great honour for us to be able to see and hear that.
So Maria and Simon has come so all the way long here to give to share their experience with us. So we would like to honor them by playing small music.
Oh, thank you so much.
Budalal, one of the music teachers, offered to introduce us to an instrument maker in Patan. We went by bus to this nearby town, passing through the suburbs of Kathmandu. After walking down a very busy street, Budalal led us through a narrow corridor into the metal workshop, which was a hive of activity. The maker greeted us, and we had a lengthy discussion with Budalal interpreting for us. We laid out the drawings of the Irish trumpet. We showed him photographs of the Irish reproduction Loch Nashade trumpa créda. We also presented moulds from the mouthpiece and the end plate. After much discussion and measuring, he told us he would be happy to make a new one for us. We were advised that the best place to go to find Narsingha players was the mountain town of Gurkha. So we got on a bus in Kathmandu. And when we got there, we decided the best place to go would be the local museum. There on display was all the instruments from a wedding band called a pancha baya. We were lucky to meet Tika, a teacher from Pokhara, who was there with his students. As he spoke English, he kindly agreed to explain the meaning of the instrument collection displayed.
They are the Nepali musical instruments. They are used to that play at the time of the marriage ceremony or on the programs. They give you very that good sound that we call that Narsingha, the bigger one, that one. It's quite nice, and they played it in a group.
In a group together?
Yeah, group together.
How long have people been playing these here?
They're about 3 to 500 years. From there it continues till now. Yeah, but some change been about there, on the safe and sides being changed, but they are still using it.
Thank you very much.
And then we asked him about the possibility of contacting a Narsingha player, because he had advised us that the wedding season wasn't going to be coming up for another couple of months, and that all the musicians were scattered around the mountains. So, but that there was a Narsingha player living in Gurkha. We were introduced to Krishna, the local school teacher who knew this player.
Western part of Pokhara, yeah?
So that afternoon, we went with Krishna to the house of Shanta Damai, a Narsingha player. Now, he wasn't there when we arrived, but the ladies of the house brought out some drums that we could examine. And while we were looking at those, Shanta arrived with a cow on a string. Now, he'd brought the cow along to use her to plough his fields. So when he found out what we were doing, we showed him photographs of our Irish instruments, and he was very impressed with that. He opened his workshop and brought out 2 Narsingha. Now, he explained that they came in pairs, that they were always played as a pair together, and they stayed together. And each side of the curve of the instrument, each instrument being a semicircle, when you put them up in the air vertically together, you got a full circle. And that represented each partner of a marriage coming together to make the full circle of the marriage. He described the short mouthpiece end, 6 inches long approximately, as being where the notes in the instrument were being produced, and that the rest of the length amplified them. Now that, of course, is what a bugle does. He also mentioned how a small amount of sand was put in at the mouthpiece end to improve the sound. It's very interesting. We'd never heard of that. And then he played 4 high notes, having accurate intervals, and most importantly, he began to circular breathe. So the tongue is going...
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. Brrr. Like that? Yeah. He then turned the instrument into an S position by turning the 2 parts through 180 degrees, with the bell pointing forward. He asserted that the instruments were put in this position when 2 wedding parties met on the road. Thus the horns were pointing in a threatening manner as they approached each other. Now when they got close, they would start to play, using circular breathing, keeping them going. And it became a competition to see who could play for the longest without taking a break. Sometimes they might play for as long as half an hour. And meantime, the guests in each wedding party were taking bets as to who would win the competition.
Went to wedding procession, yeah? Yes, encounter.
So that was a very fruitful meeting. We learnt about parade, we learnt about display, we learnt about wedding ceremonies, and we learnt about circular breathing. But in the meantime, Krishna had told us that we probably wouldn't find a band in Gurkha at the time of year that we were there. So he recommended that we go on to the tourist city of Pokhara. We got a bus again from Gurkha to Pokhara. When we arrived in Pokhara, we booked into a hotel owned by a man called Raz. He knew a local Pokhara band, so he offered to arrange for the band to come and play on the roof of the hotel for an afternoon, so that we could get a full-on exposure to the music. So we had a great afternoon. They played tune after tune after tune, beautiful, lively music, uplifting. And when the Narsingha came in with the music, the whole thing would get this incredible boost. when we came back to Ireland, we were able to look at the possibility that Irish trumpets, in the first instance, occur in pairs, very like their predecessors from the Bronze Age, and that they could be used, played in weddings, in competition, in parade. And it enriched our knowledge to a huge extent. We had a wonderful time, and I want to thank everybody there in Nepal who looked after us so well, and we look forward so much to going back there again.